So, as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We
Mm.
acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners or viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. So my name is Rudayna Bahubeshi. I'm based here in Takaranto and living and working in Parkdale, but born on Unceded Algonquin territory. My family is in Ottawa, and my folks come from Eritrea and Yemen. I have been working in some capacity in like the social impact sector for pretty much my whole career. So currently, I have the deep pleasure of serving as principal at Evenings and Weekends Consulting, and I know you've had a chance to interview my colleagues Leticia and Paul before on the channel. Prior to that, I came from working in healthcare, health system planning. So, working on the team leading the health equity strategy in Ontario, working on the first provincial Black Health Plan, and other strategies focused on reducing disparities in health. And then prior to that, have worked with a number of grassroots nonprofits, charities, focused on areas of gender equity, political advocacy, anti-racism, environmental sustainability. So it's a wide breadth of things, but really tied together by a deep commitment to equity and justice. And that's the sort of similar configuration of folks who've come together at evenings and weekends. We work with folks who are artists, nonprofit leaders, policymakers, lawyers, people who've worked in education, but again, brought together by like a deep belief in a better world being possible and a keenness to work with folks across sectors to really bring that into being. And so we have been around for just about 3 years now, so pretty young, but there's been a lot of really exciting work. And so I look forward to digging into that deeper when we talk about the other questions.
Amazing. We thank you for your service. That's awesome. Awesome. And so, what inspires you about the work that you do?
Yeah, so currently, I think I'm really inspired and energized by the multidisciplinary nature of the work. And so just in the sense that I think it's really exciting and intellectually stimulating to think about different systems and strategies, whether, in working with some of the partners we have who are in universities and colleges or in grassroots organizations or in, national or international charities. But also because it's a deep reminder of the broad breadth of actors and folks who need to be involved in thinking about how do we rise up to the incredible challenges of the day. Folks are experiencing unprecedented economic disparity. We're in the just seeing every day the manifestations of climate change. We are seeing genocide and conflict and war unfolding across the country or across the world rather. And so it's a reminder of like the different capacities and different roles we all have, regardless of the places we are and the sectors we work in, to challenge and intervene and sort of build towards a greater possibility.
Of course, this is we're in a world of times of unshakiness, uncertainty,
Mm,
from, the lack of housing, food sovereignty,
mhm.
and those things. So, that's this just another layer that we have to really unpack and really get to the root and be held accountable for these things. You know what I mean? And collaboration, because we know that collaboration is the key to social change. That's what we're doing actually right now. And it's a beautiful thing. So, on the flip side, what challenges or barriers have you faced in your work, and how have you overcome them or in the process of overcoming them?
Yeah, I think particularly when we talk about areas of like equity and justice and anti-oppression, um, and in fact, I think all kinds of areas where you're trying to do new and different work or challenge folks to long overdue work, you could be met with a sense of scarcity that just manifests as that's not possible. We don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the investment. And to an extent, I understand it. We've all lived through multiple areas of different kinds of political austerity, of underfunding of grassroots organizations, of or all kinds of public facing and public serving organizations, frankly, from grassroots to government programs that are investing in social assistance and uh, um, areas that are falling short, frankly, of meeting the needs of all of our communities. And at the same time, I think that while those broader systems are to blame, it's become kind of like an automatic assumption of like, we can't do that. That's not us. That's not happening at this moment. And so I think being able to sort of change and challenge that mindset and also understand that when it comes to, in particular, the work of anti-oppression, it's not a matter of like one arm of your organization or strategy. It's actually a value that's embedded and in the foundation of the success of everything you're doing. So if you aren't invested in, thinking about working anti-oppressively with the communities you serve, how are you going to design programs suitable to their needs? How are you going to make sure folks are accessing the necessary programs? How are you going to work really collaboratively and meaningfully to vision what's next for your organization? Like, it's not just about how do we have this strategy over here, but it's actually integral to your sustainability, your impact, your all of these things that an organization is saying is their top priority. And so really trying to like help sort of flip the script and help folks understand that better while understanding that yes, we are being challenged to do more with less than ever. But also it's necessary to setting ourselves up for any kind of success in the long run. And I think I'm not so much speaking about our partners when I talk about that kind of challenge, because folks who are coming to us, I think, appreciate the importance of that kind of work and that kind of strategic thinking. But I'm also always cognizant that when it comes to uh, particularly equity related work, folks who are already engaging in it or who are seeking support to do this work strategically, it's a self-selecting process. And it's often the folks that you never hear from or that who are maybe a little bit earlier in their journey, who are probably at greatest risk of not meeting the needs of the communities they serve. And so I'm both thinking about how do we resource this work necessarily for folks who are engaging in it, but also how do we bring others into the fold who aren't thinking about that work? Because that's kind of where I think the greatest risks lie. So those are some of the challenges that I'm thinking about front and center, particularly in the climate we're in, which has made uh, some parties have made a deep effort to like just stigmatize even talking about the reality of unequal wealth and unequal opportunity.
That's it, and it's more prominent now. When we're seeing that, we're seeing those unjust levels.
Mm.
So yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you: is there anything new or anything that you want to amplify to the audience that you're working on currently?
Yeah, I think some of the work that we're doing that I think is really meaningful is, or that I think we've gotten a lot of interest more recently and a lot of great feedback from the folks we're working with, is even in recruitment, like thinking about bringing an anti-oppressive lens. Because I was talking about more about the community-facing pieces, but just as much the internal-facing pieces. We have, and I've been in organizations that sometimes have a great external reputation, and I'm like, that is as a worker, that was the most harmful place I ever worked. You know what I mean? And so there are sometimes these just incredibly narrow viewpoints to like we can focus on the work outside and worry less about the internal work, as though when we're talking about, Black communities, Indigenous communities, as though those folks aren't also embedded within the organization itself. So I think it's been really exciting to lean more into thinking about or not lean more into, but just additionally lean into thinking about what is the internal infrastructure culture that we need to build to sustain that impactful work and also do it in alignment with our values. Because you can't sacrifice external impact for the well-being of those who are internal to the organization, who are then going to burn out, who are the people who have the most intimate knowledge of and relationships with folks who are outside of the organization in terms of the communities we're serving. And so I think, yeah, some of the work we've been doing in recruitment has been getting a lot of attention. And I think it's been exciting because we've heard just as much from partners we work with as the candidates themselves, including those who aren't necessarily successful in those processes of like, I'm just really glad to have received transparency, to receive prompt communication, respect for my time, to have had an atmosphere of interviews in a process that actually felt like I could bring forth my best self, because those experiences are very stressful and often unnecessarily so. I sometimes do think that folks think like if I put people in a high pressure environment, I'll have a sense of how they function under high pressure, when in fact you're just stifling people from bringing forth their best ideas and speaking really clearly about, the achievements they've had and that kind of thing. I think particularly in a time where and not that, though I think there is more conversation about it, I don't think we're necessarily as sectors rising to meet the need accordingly, but just more people talking about neurodivergence, more people talking about disabilities they experience, and then to also not think about that really carefully as we think about how do we foster an environment for the broad abilities of people, broad experiences of people. It's been really great to think about not just the recruitment, but also the onboarding, the building a culture of an organization that understands the plurality of differences in abilities, strengths, and needs, and have folks respond to that really well, particularly at a time where I think people are having a harder time hiring than ever. And I think that's because people are no longer willing to settle for really toxic environments. I mean, on the one hand, like we're experiencing great economic instability as individuals, but then we're also like, I deserve to be treated with dignity, which is an important, like the bare minimum, right? But it means that organizations who have maybe been more used to it being a hirer's market where they can, have their pick of whomever they want, need to really be mindful that reciprocity needs to be embedded into their processes and their exchanges with their workers. And so being able to help support a shift in the narrative on the culture of hiring, retention, building trusting teams, deepening accountability such that it's not just about the worker being accountable to the leadership and the board, but in fact also the other way around just as much or perhaps even more so. I think is really, yeah, has been really meaningful to me. And so I've been really excited about that kind of work as well.
Wow, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. So let me ask you, how do you feel about the future of social impact?
It's interesting. I mean, I think that any of us living in this particular moment, even in the last couple of years, it is very easy to feel disheartened and concerned. And I feel all of those things all of the time, frankly. And I think that there's also a deep sense of overwhelm because there is a way that on every issue area, like some of the areas we talked about, housing is more unaffordable than ever. The climate is more dangerous than ever in terms of rising temperatures. Uh, there has been movements towards fascism from all kinds of governments that also impact our lives here at home. Um, all of these things just feel like it's just happening on all fronts, and it's difficult to know where to target our energy when it comes to organizing and advocacy. But I think what has also been really heartening and an important reminder for me is just engaging with elders in the community and folks who, because while the particular set of circumstances of what we might be experiencing, what we might be seeing, feels different, the sense of overwhelm, the sense of, a pulling back of rights. This is not the only difficult time that people alive have had to deal with. And so I think it's just been really helpful to sit with folks who have been organizers for decades and decades, who have been organizing perhaps for the better part of a century, and be reminded that like people are continuing to find that stamina. And while it is important to, take care of oneself and take care of one's communities, it is also in part our responsibility to also find that stamina. It's like in the words of Miriam Kaba, right? Like hope being a discipline, like we do have to push forth, and how do we lean on one another and lean on the lessons learned to continue to organize and move forth in meaningful ways. And I feel like in my life, some of the intensity feels unprecedented when it comes to just seeking to make it impossible for folks to talk about, Palestine, the rights of trans folks, the realities of uh, racism and anti-Black, like just this like effort to roll everything back, not just to 2020, but like decades and decades back. I think all we can do is continue to use our voice and continue to fight because we're not going to roll back. So the times I think feel scary. And at the same time, I think those who seek to take away rights want that impact, right? And so how do we just continue to forge together and keep going?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, the generations coming after us, the ones that are here now, they're looking at us and holding us accountable, and we are laying a foundation. But we do know we have to pass the torch, pass the baton. So we do our best to make that impact,
Right.
and hopefully not bring as much baggage for the next generation. Make it full of gold if it's baggage, right? Yeah. Well, man, this has been so powerful, Rudayna. Like, you're a wealth of knowledge. So my last question for you is just give us your closing thoughts and calls to actions at this time.
Yeah, and I think it just in terms of what we're talking about, like as you talk about baggage, and I talk about sort of these efforts to sort of silent people speaking truths. I think an important reminder is that taking risks is actually more important than ever in this environment because when more of us take risks, it actually dilutes the sense of that risk, right? We absorb it together and we sort of lay claim on what's not going to be okay to try and push down people's throats. But I feel like I'm constantly hearing like it's too risky to say this at work. It's too risky to do this. But when the risk is high, that's actually, I feel like, the most important time to really chip away at it. And we do that by uniting our voices and making it less risky for the person next to us and they for us. So I think taking risks continues to be really, really important for me. Um, I would also say like engaging in mutual aid, particularly at a time where things can very easily feel disheartening. I think reminding ourselves of our both our individual and collective powers, whether it's looking out for unhoused neighbors, particularly, in heat waves, whether it's volunteering in our communities, whether it's giving what we can to mutual aid campaigns. I think both the collective organizing we were naming, but also a reminder that like we can look out for one another, even if you're not someone who has very much money, whether it's time, whether it's like whatever it may be. I think being able to engage in collective care in those kinds of ways are really valuable and are also both for the impact and both for just like continuing to like keep the practice and like keep us moving. And then I would also say finding your co-conspirators, whether in the workplace, whether in other spheres. I'm just a believer that eventually the strength of our collective voice cannot be ignored. So I would leave it with those three things, I think.
Very powerful. That's it right there. And I know a lot of people will get some golden nuggets from this. And again, on behalf of SETI, I want to thank you so much for your time, taking the time to give us your words of wisdom. We wish you nothing but success, mental and physical health and wellness. And yeah, just prosperity all the way around. So I know it's not a goodbye. It's definitely a see you later.
Yeah, and it's so lovely
And,
to meet you. So I appreciate you reaching out and I appreciate all the channel is doing to keep folks inspired and amplify like such critical work that um not everyone knows is also happening. And so I think that work
absolutely.
is really incredibly important. I appreciate y'all because I know you've been at it for a minute,
Mhm,
but we need the inspiration and
mhm.
the connection more than ever.
That's right. That's right. So we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So we will definitely be in touch. I know Victor will be sending you a ton of invites for this and that.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right, sweetheart. Take care. Thanks again.
All right, take it easy. Bye.
Bye bye.